to the assembled devotees, that we can say something for the pleasure of Shishi Radhesham. May it benefit all the devotees who are here and listening, and may we be in line with Guru Parampara. Hare Krishna. So, we're going to look at a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. And there's one particular verse that I've been listening to Prabhupada's lecture on this verse again and again. And printed it out, also reading it carefully, and I wanted to share some thoughts and kind of follow Prabhupada's presentation of this verse, his lecture on this verse, and then maybe we can have some discussion and share some thoughts about that. I was finding this particular verse so valuable, so enlightening. And the theme of it is working in spiritual consciousness. What that means. To work in spiritual consciousness. And interestingly, when Prabhupada says in this particular lecture, when he's talking about working in spiritual consciousness, he's not talking about, you can say, direct Krishna conscious activities, hearing and chanting. He's actually talking about going to work, your daily activities, your daily responsibilities, and how to do that in spiritual consciousness. So he starts off by saying, first of all, spiritual knowledge is necessary before we can even talk about how to act in a certain way. Spiritual knowledge is, first of all, necessary. Why is that? Because we all have our personal ideas and personal conclusions about life, about who I am, about what life is. We're all walking around with fixed ideas. And it's very deep. We hold them. We're very attached to them. We may know this or not know this, but we're all walking around with conclusions already about life, about truth, about myself, about others. So, in short, we're all trapped in our own subjectivity. We're not really living in the real world. We're in our own world with our own ideas and thoughts and opinions and truths. And we see through that lens always. And so why is hearing so important? Because those fixed thoughts and ideas and conclusions, they have to start to loosen. And we have to be a little flexible. And actually we have to dissolve some of those ideas and replace them with the truth. That's a slow process. We have to hear for a long time, very patiently. That's a slow process. It's not that you hear some truth from the Bhagavatam and just because it's up here and I can remember it, now it's impacting my life and affecting the way I live. No, it's a slow process. We still have to dissolve our own ideas and conclusions, which are very deep-rooted. So, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he would give the example of the boatman. This is about being trapped in our own subjective world. The boatman. There's a man and his main work, he has his boat. And he's taking people from one place to the other. And he's always looking up at the sky because he's concerned, that the weather is going to impact what he can do with his work, if it's going to rain or not. He's always in that consciousness of just considering his work. That's his world. So one great mystic comes before him one day and says, "You ask for any boon and I will give it to you. You can ask for anything. What is your desire? I will grant it to you. I have the power to grant it." So, what does the boatman ask for? The boatman's thinking that sometimes he has to pull his boat along the shore to bring it to the right spot. And when he does that, his feet, because the rocks are very sharp, his feet hurt or can be cut, can be injured. And so when he's given the option, you can choose anything you want. I will give you any boon you want. What does he ask for? He says, I want proper shoes so that when I'm carrying the boat, I won't cut my feet. You see, that's all he can perceive. That's his consciousness. That's his world, his subjective world trapped in it. I'm a boatman. That's the identity. Instead of, he could have asked for anything. I want to be king. I want to give up the boat business for good and just live comfortably. But what did he ask for? Sometimes our prayers are like this, right? They're very small prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead where so much is actually possible. But we have a very closed world. So this example is given as how we can be entrapped with our own ideas, our own conclusions. So we have to hear for a long time. And we have to work from what we hear. There's many ideas in Krishna consciousness, many truths. And our meditation is, the real task is to, how do I work from this truth? Tomorrow, today, right now, at work, with my family, what would it look like to operate from this truth? Not just it's a nice truth and now I'll go to the next truth and the next truth and now I know so many truths, but we're still living exactly the same way. So we hear truth and we think, what does this look like to be living this truth? And if you therefore hear and then start to act from what you hear, then Prabhupada explains in this lecture that leads to realization. What is realization? It's knowledge awakened within. Bhagavad Gita has so much knowledge. It's realization when it's awakened within me. And then it's yours. Otherwise, it's just somebody else's. We hear from great acharyas, it's some truth that they've realized, and we hear it. But now the task is that we realize it. Otherwise, it's still just the acharya's truth. And the acharya wants that. The gurus want that. They want us to awaken these truths from within. And if it awakens from within, then it's always there. It's always yours. You won't lose it with time. So Prabhupada says, if you don't have realization, eventually the knowledge will subside. It will fade away. So we can learn so much. Eventually, everything we learn can just fade away with time because it never was awakened from within. There's one devotee I met when I was living in New York, in the temple there, Bhakti Center. I was very fortunate because my service was to serve our guests. So many guests are always coming to New York. New York is a place where many people are stopping. You come from India, you come from Europe. Usually New York could be the first stop. So many people were visiting and I had the opportunity to serve them. And there was one devotee who was visiting. His name was Orjasvat Prabhu. Anybody here know? Yes. Orjasvat Prabhu? Yes. Very special devotee. So he came to visit and I was able to serve him for a little bit and just in simple ways. I can't do much, just whatever I'm asked to do, I try to do. But we were asking him to give class. And he was sharing that he had recently just had a stroke. And so he was a little embarrassed about speaking. This was right after he had a stroke. Because he said he couldn't remember so many things that he had previously learned and he had trouble getting them out of his mouth. He said he could see it, but I couldn't see it sometimes and I can't speak it. This is, right after a stroke, so his mind was in this situation. So anyway, he agreed to give class. And what I observed and what was amazing was that he forgot all the verses that he had learned. Anytime he was trying to make a point and then he tried to substantiate it with a verse, but he forgot all the verses. But all these points he was sharing, all the realizations, it was just like a constant flow of realization. He was sharing so many gems of truth and of wisdom from his own experiences. That was there. But all the memory, all the verses from memory were all gone. So this is, therefore, realization stays with you. But if it's just memory, we can get tricked sometimes that we're advancing spiritually because we start gaining more and more knowledge. That's a trick of Maya. We think that more knowledge equals spiritual advancement. But the real value, the real thing, that we want the realization from within, and that requires that we hear submissively from the right source, and we also act on what we hear. And this, Prabhupada explains, acting, this work, and also hearing. You bring those together and you will get realization. And that survives death. That will survive death. Whereas just memory can last a few lives, but then it fades away and has to go eventually, because the modes are always changing, shifting. You can carry something from one life to the next, say you learn some skill, how to play an instrument. That may get carried over, but eventually it will be gone, because it's simply a material inclination, skill. The modes change, your environment changes suddenly. If you want to learn it, you have to learn it all over again at some other point. But what is it that stays from life to life, that never changes? Is when knowledge awakens from the soul. Because the soul is eternal, is permanent. And the knowledge that awakens from the soul also stays with you. So we have to hear for a long time, and we have to work. So as I was mentioning, Prabhupada says in this verse that I'm going to now recite, the work he's talking about is your basic everyday work, how to work in spiritual consciousness. And he says, first of all, the first point, go on with your usual work. You don't have to change anything. This is the first point he makes. You don't need to change your work. You don't need to change your job. You don't need to change your situation. You have certain daily responsibilities. None of that has to change. This is the first point he makes. The point is how to work. And so we'll look at this verse now. This verse is describing how to work in our everyday life. He says this is the formula to working in spiritual consciousness. Are you eager to hear it? All right. That's why I like to give the verse a little bit later, because we hear it and then just forget, and then things just go on. But if we see the whole background, and he says this is the whole formula for working in spiritual consciousness. So this is second chapter, text 48. Yogasta kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya sidya asidyo samobhutva samatvam yoga uchate. And it ends with, this is called yoga. This is an interesting definition of yoga by Krishna. He's calling this yoga. This is called yoga. So what does it say? Perform your duty. Perform your duties equipoised, O Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. So perform your duties. That's the first point. There's two parts to this verse. Perform your duties. So in other words, don't neglect your duties. This verse may not be helpful for people who are neglectful of their duties. Because if we're neglectful, say, for example, if you have a family and you're neglectful to your family, and then you hear a verse that says, be detached from family, that can create a lot of harm. Right? That won't be helpful, that verse. The first thing is become dutiful. Overcome neglect and perform your duties. Whatever your duties are, all your responsibilities, perform them. You know, if someone is neglectful to family, and then we hear verses about being detached from family, that can just be used for that person, you know, to just remain as they are and be irresponsible and so forth. So, first part of it, Prabhupada mentions, is performing your duties. Your duties should not stop. All your responsibilities, do them well. Do them with integrity. Do them honestly. Do them responsibly. So our jobs, families, our daily duties, the things that are necessary, just continue on with them and be responsible. That's the first part of this verse. This is why this used to be the purpose of Varnashram Dharma. Varnashram Dharma is a very powerful system. Social, it created a kind of social equilibrium for people because you become stable. If you actually follow Varnashram Dharma nicely, you'll have a healthy mind. You know, you have a certain nature, and corresponding with that nature is a certain work. And you do that work. And there are gurus for that work. Whatever work it may be, Vaishya, Shudra, doesn't matter. But you have a nature and you do a certain kind of work, and in that way you stabilize your life and your mind. And from that healthy position of mind and life and work, now we can talk about something transcendental. Now we can learn what transcendental living is. It comes from that stable place. So nowadays we don't have that. You know, we don't have that Varnashram Dharma as a background. That's why we require so many other things now to try to help, like psychology. You know, it's like we don't have that stable, healthy mind, and our minds have gone off in so many places and become restless. And so then psychology is there just to try to help, hopefully get the mind back to the mode of goodness. But that's questionable as well, because psychology, they have a very limited view. There's a limited view of truth, of life, of the real purpose of life. If that's lacking, then hearing from such a person, maybe you can get some relief, and you can start to learn some things, say from ignorance or passion, a little bit into goodness. And that's as far as psychology can go, unless the psychologist is transcendental, which is pretty rare, I would say, to find. Unless the psychologist is a pure devotee. So then the best we can do is just go from passion, start to understand what is goodness. So without Varnashram Dharma, which brought the Varnashram Dharma itself, the whole system was in the mode of goodness. The whole system itself is considered to be in the mode of goodness, which is a great platform for now spiritual life. So without that, then we have to do the best we can. And so Prabhupada is trying to give us everything. He attempted to give us everything, even without the Varnashram Dharma as a background and the mode of goodness. Really, in spiritual life, we have to focus on these two things, mode of goodness and then direct spiritual activity. There's a possibility of going from passion to transcendence if you have real faith. And that's a mysterious thing. What is that? Somehow, from a lower mode, it is technically possible to perform spiritual activity, to connect to your spiritual consciousness, but it's very, I would say, rare and difficult. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, without the mode of goodness, trying to practice bhakti, there will be many hardships. So we have to do both. But we do mode of goodness for the purpose of coming to spiritual consciousness. You see, people who don't know about spiritual consciousness or believe it or accept it, they're just doing mode of goodness in and of itself for health, for goodness, for satisfaction. It never goes beyond that. And eventually the environment, the people around you will change, and you'll be in that whirlpool of the three modes of nature, and eventually you'll go back down to passion and ignorance. It's never solid or steady. You can do very good activities in this world, but you can very easily again be pulled away. You will be pulled away, because the Bhagavad Gita says the modes are always shifting and alternating. They're fighting for supremacy. First mode of goodness right now is prevalent, and then it changes to passion, and then it changes and then it's back to goodness, and that's always going on. But a devotee understands, okay, mode of goodness is not the goal, but if I can just be there and embrace that, then from there I can step into spiritual consciousness most favorably from that mode. And so it's true to say that only a devotee, only someone who has some spiritual knowledge or spiritual awakening can get the value from the mode of goodness. Because if you don't have that and it's just the mode of goodness, it will change. It has to change. The modes are always shifting. But a devotee says, okay, mode of goodness, this is why it's important. Because if I'm healthy inside my heart, my mind, then I can chant properly. Then I can hear properly. I can hear the glories of the Lord. Because the heart becomes a little steady and still. And from that I can receive. So that's the value of the mode of goodness. The only devotee knows the value of the mode of goodness. If we take it as an end in of itself, then it doesn't last. It's still good. It's still better than passion and ignorance, right? We got to do something in this world. So people who are striving for goodness is great, because such persons will be, hopefully gentle, knowledgeable, humble. All those good qualities are there. So it's better than the other. But this is the real point of it, to use the mode of goodness for another purpose, a spiritual purpose. So, the first part of this is perform your duties. The second part is the hardest part. And Prabhupada says in the lecture, abandon your anxiousness for success or failure. Anxious, right? We're always anxious. We're eager to succeed and we fear failing. There's always an anxiety behind both. That last part, there's two parts: perform your duties responsibly and then be detached from the results. This second part is what makes this yoga. Now we come to the category of yoga. If you can act in this world totally letting go of the results, but you just remain steady in consciousness, and you continue on just doing what is good, what is right, that brings it to the category of yoga. But this is difficult, right? If we look closely, we'll see I'm always eager for my success, and I'm always afraid of failing, right? In short, most of us, mostly all of us, are result-oriented, right? That's the term, to be result-oriented. And Prabhupada says in this lecture, he said, don't associate with the result. Do your work well, and let the result come, whatever it may be. How do we do that? How do you actually let go of the results? Let go of success and failure. I remember when I first joined the ashram in New York, then I was told to go out on book distribution. That was a shock. That was a new and shocking experience for me. In New York City, giving out books, brand new, devotee pretty much. And I remember I was paying attention to my experience that lasted a few weeks of doing this. The first thing is, the first time I went out, I was just basically avoiding everybody. And I was concerned more about, it just felt awkward, it felt strange, I was kind of avoiding it. And so the motive behind that was what? Just fear of just putting myself out there, and I was resisting it. Okay, that was maybe the first few days. Then after that, this is interesting what happened after that. So same thing happened, this went on for some time of just kind of avoiding a lot of exchanges with people. And then the next time, again, very little results, didn't really sell too many books, maybe one or two, and I was out there for a long time. And then it was time to go home, back to the ashram. And I went down to the subway, the New York subway. And I realized I forgot to bring my Metro card. So I had no money because I didn't sell any books. So it was amazing. Suddenly, when I need to get home, oh, you better believe I'm going to sell a book now. Otherwise, I'm not sitting in the subway station. It's dark outside. You know, I got a 2-hour walk maybe. So suddenly, I became so determined and enthusiastic. And the first person I saw, went up to, this book is Bhagavad Gita, this, explaining, okay, didn't work, went to the next, so determined. Where's that determination coming from? My desperation, right? So once I had to actually get home, and that became a personal issue, then I became so inspired to sell a Bhagavad Gita, and it didn't take long, The third, fourth person, they got it, I had that money, I got home. So I bought a Metro card, went home. Okay, so then I'm observing this, right? That, wow, look at this. Everything is my motive. Where's the question of doing this for Krishna? Right? So then I thought, let me get more into this and get more serious. And so I kind of just showed up more and I tried harder. And then I was selling some books were going out, and then what happens with that? When you succeed and you have a false ego, what happens? Then there's pride. Then there's a kind of competition that I felt happening within me with the other devotees who were going out. If you have a false ego, when you succeed, you'll feel pride. When you fail, you'll feel disappointment. Depression, whatever it may be, but this is what follows. So, seeing how, going through different, wow, okay, this was the motive. It's always my own motive. And then it became, so like this, I was just observing how always there's some self-reason, there's some self-motive. How high is it to actually go out there and do this for Krishna? To actually serve Krishna. So high, that consciousness. And what I learned was that you can't directly stop this problem of being attached to success and failure. You can't directly deal with it because it's a symptom of something else. To be attached and to be anxious about your success and your failure, it's a symptom of some other thing. What is that other thing? It's a particular state of consciousness. We have a particular state of consciousness which causes us to be attached to success and failure. What is that? It's the egocentric state of consciousness. The egocentric means that the ego, the self is in the center. I'm in the center. That's the background. And therefore you have to be concerned with your own success and failure. So the real thing in spiritual life is how to address that. How to shift that. How to change that. You see, activities may not do it because you can just be performing more and more activities under an egocentric state of consciousness. Do more service, do more this, do more that, but what about this thing that has a hold on me, this egocentric state of consciousness? Is that shifting at all? That's why we have to bring our mind into the activities that we're doing and understand why we're doing them and understanding the shift that has to take place in our hearts. We can't be robotic or mechanical in just doing certain, even spiritual activities. That can all just lead to pride. So much pride. There's such a thing as spiritual pride. That the ego of a yogi, the false ego of a yogi, of a spiritual practitioner. Many people have fallen from that very clever snare of Maya. And even on the spiritual path, you become so proud of your abilities, your renunciation. All of that can be there. So, what do? Do we not do these activities? No, we do them all, but we understand that actually I can't do it. I can't actually do it. I'll continue to go on book distribution knowing that I actually can't do it for Krishna. But what can I do? I can know that and see that, and I can long from my heart for Krishna to make this shift in my consciousness so that I actually can do it for him. That's all we can do. We can't perform bhakti. We can't do bhakti. Bhakti is eternally going on. It's an energy of the Lord, the highest, most purest energy of the Lord, and it's always going on. The gopis right now, the Krishna, all of it's happening. They're in pure love, they're in pure bhakti. Now, I have material consciousness, and I can't decide to do bhakti. But if I do the activities of bhakti with longing in my heart, then Krishna may sometimes allow me to tune into that energy, where I experience it for a moment. I get some little glimpse of it. And then with that experience, we start to long more and more for it. Because nothing can compare to that experience, even if it's just a moment. So the same idea of book distribution. I remember one day, and I don't know why, I was out there in New York City, so many people, such a passionate place to try to give out books. I was standing we go to the busiest block, and just stand right in the middle of it, and people are just constantly, and you're on the mental platform, and I used to choose this person, maybe not, the other person doesn't look like he's going to take a book, I'm going to avoid that person, let's try this person, the mental platform. And for whatever reason, one day I was out there, and all of that just went away for a few moments, and I felt for the first time in my life totally fearless. I didn't care whoever stepped in front of me, I just approached with a kind of fearlessness and an ease, where I felt like I had a new energy and I wasn't getting tired. I can't do it. You can try again, right? Try to do that the next time, it doesn't work. Just like Narada Muni in the Bhagavatam. The story of Narada Muni. His mother passed away when he was a very young boy. And it's amazing how he saw that. He saw it as the will of God. Somehow God has arranged this. And he was fortunate because when he was young, he heard from these great sages. So he knew what to do at that point. Now he lost his shelter. He was a young boy and his only shelter was his mother, and she had just passed away. She was bit by a snake, a poisonous snake. And so he thought, that's it, my shelter, my mother is gone. So I'll go now, seek out what I've heard and what I've understood to be the true shelter. Krishna, God in the heart. So he starts to travel and he goes up north and he's going through cities. Cities represent temptations, the mode of passion. So many things are being offered, but nothing bothered him. He kept going. And he was going through forests. Forests can also be very dangerous places. So he also showed that he was so determined, nothing could stop him. Kept going. Finally, he came to the spot where he sat down for meditation. And it's described there in the Bhagavatam. He sat down in meditation with love, with bhava. It wasn't just a, austere yogi sitting there concentrating on stopping the mind. But it was with love he was meditating. And what happened? Krishna appeared. And then he became ecstatic. All of his senses became enlivened. He was so enthusiastic, couldn't believe what he was experiencing. And then in a moment, Krishna vanished. And he thought, let me try this again. This worked. Let me start my meditation again. And he sat down there, nothing. And then, but again, Krishna was very kind to him, and he heard a voice saying that, Krishna said, you won't see me again in this life. But because you saw me once, now you will long for me. And that longing will purify your heart to such an extent, your heart will become cleansed from the longing. And then you'll always be with me. You have to purify yourself completely. He said, because your service is not complete and your consciousness is still tainted, you cannot see me again. But if you long for me, your heart will get cleansed and purified with time. That's such a nice verse to meditate on. So we perform our activities, but there has to be longing there. Now, all of us are here surely because we had some moment or some glimpse of something special, right? That's meant to happen. Krishna gave something, and now he'll take it away. Because now we have to prove ourselves, and we have to long from the heart. So continue on all the activities of hearing, chanting, but it's not the accumulation of rounds that's going to give us an experience of Krishna. It's not if we do more, or if I try harder even. It's not about trying harder or doing more. It's about bringing that quality of consciousness into the activity where I long from the heart. And I realize I can't do this. I can't perform bhakti. I'm just imitating bhakti. But at the same time, I know it exists in Krishna. I'm longing for it. And when you're ready, please, whenever you find fit, whenever you're ready, I'll just do this forever until you reveal it to me, until you reveal bhakti to me, what it really means. I'll do it forever. That's all we can do. That consciousness actually conquers Krishna. So once we have the attitude of unconditional patience, that even if I don't experience, I had some experiences early in my Krishna consciousness, it was so nice, now it's been gone for so long. But if we think, but anyway, it's been gone for so long, I'm going to continue on sincerely, and I'm going to long from my heart that Krishna reveals himself. Whenever he's ready, I'll just continue going on with enthusiasm and with patience. And that consciousness, that attracts Krishna, that consciousness. He says, okay, this is my devotee now. This person is now coming into the category of a true devotee. And then finally, when Krishna is ready, when Krishna wants, then again he just reveals himself, and then all of our desires, all of our heart's desires are fulfilled in that one experience of Krishna. It's like the example is the Chataka bird. There's like maybe, I don't know, if it's a real bird or not, but there's stories about this bird. Some people say mythological bird, but the devotees say you have to become like the Chataka bird. You know the Chataka bird? Chataka bird is a bird that will only drink water that comes from the cloud, that drops from a cloud. So when the Chataka bird sees a dark cloud forming, then he gets ready. He gets excited, gets prepared, and he perches himself, goes onto a branch, and he's looking up, and he's just waiting, and nothing's coming. But he's just waiting with that expectation, with that hope that a drop comes from that cloud. But nothing comes. And all the other birds are thinking, Chataka, you are such a peculiar, strange bird. There's water everywhere. There's water look at these crystal clear lakes and rivers and little ponds, and all the birds are just enjoying, all the different birds are getting water from so many places. And why are you so foolish that you'll only take that from the cloud, that water from the cloud? So, but this is the Chataka bird, the nature of the Chataka, only from the cloud I'll take. So this is important for devotee to meditate on. That so many people in so many ways, so many kinds of happiness are being offered to us, but we have a certain kind of happiness that we long for, the real happiness of the heart from Krishna. And we don't get so into that. Right, so, and then, I was hearing a class by Radhanath Swami, and he was elaborating on this Chataka bird, and he said the Chataka bird, finally it sees a dark cloud is coming, and it goes up on the branch, and it's ready, and it looks like it's about to rain, but instead of rain, thunderbolt right on the Chataka bird's head. And then no rain. And so the Chataka bird again leaves, but always waiting, always looking. Okay, another dark cloud. Let me try again. You see, it's kind of like steady. That no matter what the other birds say, no matter what happens, how long it's been without any rain, it keeps returning to that kind of consciousness of expecting but not demanding. To always expect the mercy of Krishna, but never to demand it. And to know I can't do anything. The Chataka bird cannot produce water from that cloud. It can only open its mouth and hope and long. And if we go on with that consciousness long enough, finally, then the rain comes down, the rain of mercy. And just one drop of water, one drop from that rain of mercy, Krishna's mercy, and then all of our heart's longings and desires are fulfilled. And we're forever changed by one drop. So this whole thing of overcoming the attachment to success and failure, in one sense we have to learn that we cannot do it so long that we're in a state of consciousness, an egocentric state of consciousness. You must be attached if you're in an egocentric state of consciousness. You must be attached to success and failure. My success, my failure. But we can perform activities, as this verse mentions, responsibly, and we can continue also with our spiritual activities, hearing, chanting, doing different service, knowing that I can't actually do this, I'm imitating it, but my heart longs for it. And when Krishna's ready, he can show me this energy of bhakti. Bhakti is an eternal energy always going on. The question is, am I tuned into it or not? I cannot produce bhakti. But I can be in such a state of consciousness where suddenly I become aware of it. And then I'm in it. I'm suddenly pulled into that play. It's a play. It's the vilas. Vilas, bhakti is the vilas of the Svarup Shakti of Krishna. It's a play that's always going on, this bhakti. And some people are in it right now. We're not. I'm not. But it's going on. It's maybe happening it's happening definitely right there on the altar. There's Krishna, Balaram, bhakti, pure bhakti, the exchange of the Lord and his devotees, that's happening. But I'm tuned into a lower vibration called the material vibration, material consciousness. But if I long for that energy and continue on with, as the acharyas and the gurus have given us certain activities, do those activities with that longing, and then Krishna can open it up suddenly. And he already has. Why are you all sitting here? Something has happened. Otherwise, this is crazy what we're doing. From this Italian family in New Jersey, look how I'm dressed now. How did this happen? What am I doing? Tilak on my head. This is all very strange, and it's not like I was attracted to Indian culture or nothing like that. But somehow coming in contact with a devotee like Srila Prabhupada, just hearing his sound vibration, some experiences were coming, and I thought, I have to commit to this. I don't know what I'm doing. This is so different, but I have to commit to this. And then by committing, then more things were revealed and opened up, and realizations come. This is all coming by Krishna. He's giving a little more, and then he's taking away. He has to take away so that we can sincerely, unconditionally serve. Krishna takes away because he has to see that when I'm totally empty, I still serve. I still want to serve. I still want to try to serve. And then that's the purifying of the heart, where our love starts to become more and more unconditional. And then finally, but it has to come from him to actually achieve a state of unconditional love. That has to come from Krishna. But he sees our effort, and then he blesses us with that experience and mercy. So, we're at the time, 6 o'clock, so maybe we can stop here, and if there's some thought, comment, question.
How long did it take for you from the first day of distribution to the realization?
How long did it take from all those heavier experiences of distributing books to that experience where I felt some Well, I don't remember, but it's not about time, you know? We don't advance by time. We advance by levels of consciousness. We advance by when sincerity and levels of consciousness, the quality of consciousness changing. It's not the passage of time. So, in other words, someone in the very beginning can suddenly have some very profound experience. Some may come after 40, 50, 60 years, who knows? It's not the time, but it's a connection, it's a consciousness, it's Krishna's mercy, all of these things are. So I don't remember, but it was that same couple years maybe for me. And then again, it's not like it's just some blessing came and, I don't know what I've done with it, but so Krishna's mercy.
I have one question.
Yeah, I feel.
I know we are running out of time, but
Yes.
you can answer me later. You said in the beginning, you repeated, the memories will fade away. How that relate to the story you narrated about Narad Muni? When Vyasdev asked him, how do you remember all this? And then Prabhupada says, everything that we, in transcendental spiritual devotional service, anything that we study or hear, it stays just like eternal. It never destroyed. Indradumna Maharaj, who became Gajendra 36,000 years later, he remembered the prayers that he memorized. Prabhupada has a 2 recording of Sargoswami Astakam. One recording, after 4th stanza, he was so emotional, he said he forgot. But it was not he forgot. He was like so much overwhelmed. So maybe for devotees, it's not applicable exactly how the mundane world memory. Because Prabhupada also said, I don't want to go on, it's like so many things about, Prabhupada said also, when your guru tells you to study or memorize, that is bhakti. Bhakti is eternal. Bhakti is not tangible by the modes or influenced by the modes. But if I study on my own, that is gyan. But if Guru tells you to, just like Radhanath Maharaj told me, can you study the Sarvam Bhattacharya's life with, and tell me. So that is bhakti when I take it. It's not a gyan. Even though it appears like gyan.
Yeah.
So how do we reconcile? Because you mentioned that.
It's a great point that you're making, and you gave nice examples of it as well, so I appreciate that. When the guru gives some order to study, and then someone like you who received that order with a kind of sincerity, that this has come from guru, I must now take this seriously and study. You're bringing something, some quality of consciousness into that. That is the bhakti. Is it possible that somebody says, do this, do that, and I have, again, my mundane consciousness, I'm in material consciousness, and I just study it like I study everything I learned in school. I can do that. And then what comes from that? Is that eternal? There's bhakti is above the modes, and then bhakti is also within the modes, right? Kapila Dev, Srimad Bhagavatam, bhakti within passion, within ignorance, within goodness. So bhakti is pure completely on a transcendental level. Now my consciousness, can I mutilate bhakti with my consciousness? Can I see it wrongly? Can I misinterpret? Can I treat it like as if it's just material knowledge? I can treat it like material knowledge. I studied many things in school. I can treat this book, somehow it's not, I can treat it in the same way and try to memorize things. And then what? Now, we know it had, because it's a spiritual vibration, we can say something may get in there. Is it possible for me to be so closed that I'm not transformed? I would say that's also possible from my own block of consciousness. So why am I following the Guru's instruction to study? We have that, there's some understanding there, there's some realization already there that if I do what Guru says, then Krishna will be pleased. All of that comes with it, and that quality helps. There has to be a match between my consciousness and the spiritual object, So, we can see it like that, like a parrot, can also memorize a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. Does the parrot go back to Godhead upon dying? Maybe there's some special cases. Possible. Possible. So it's possible, but it's also not always possible. There's also something we have to bring to it. You know, there's some kind of consciousness that also activates everything. It's definitely true that that doesn't have to be the